Good evening, and welcome to a candidates forum featuring candidates for the Sacramento City Council District 7 seat. I am Barbara Hopkins, a member of the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County and the moderator for today's forum. This forum is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County and the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Commission, and it is being taped for rebroadcast by the Metro Cable Channel 14. The forum is being viewed live by an audience in the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors chambers and by a live cable television audience at home. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization of women and men established to promote political responsibility through informed, active participation in government. The League does not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates or parties. Although our nonpartisanship policy does not permit endorsement of political candidates, we do, after careful study, take positions on political issues. Our format for today's program will be as follows. Each candidate will make a 1.5-minute opening statement, and next the candidates will respond to questions from our panel. The questions were submitted by the panelists and reviewed by the League members. And each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. And finally, the candidates will have a minute to make their closing statement. In the interest of time and decorum, I ask the audience to please hold their applause until the end of the forum. And now I would like to introduce the candidates who are running for Sacramento City Council District 5. Seated on my right is Mr. Ryan Chin, and seated on my left is Mr. Darrell Fong. Welcome, and thank you for agreeing to participate in today's forum. And I'd also like to introduce our panel of questioners, Mr. Cosmo Garvin of the Sacramento News and Review, Mr. Foon Rhee of the Sacramento Bee Editorial Board, and Ms. Kathleen Haley of the Sacramento Press. Thank you very much for participating in this forum. And now we are ready to begin. We'll begin with opening statements that were determined by a draw in the beginning, and Mr. Chin will make the first opening statement.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Good evening. My name is Ryan Chin. I'm running for the Sacramento City Council District 7 seat. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and for those viewing from home. And I also particularly want to thank the League of Women Voters for making this forum possible. I really appreciate and share the League's mission. You know, I'm running for City Council because I believe I can make a difference. I want to bring an independent voice and open the doors to City Hall for our community. I think for too long, only certain groups and certain people have had all the influences and all the resources, while other groups have simply been shut out and ignored. My first commitment is to make sure that I'm open, accessible, and accountable. You know, during this campaign, I've handed out over 50,000 flyers with my personal cell phone on them. So I know that none of my constituents will have any problems reaching me either now or after the election, where they have an issue or idea they'd like to share or need to know or need me to be informed of. And actually, it's been the best part of this campaign is talking to my neighbors about the matters and issues that are important to them. You know, and that's my other commitment, is to run a positive issues-based campaign. Our campaign is about our community's priorities, creating jobs, supporting our local businesses, and investing in our youth. I want to thank again the League of Women Voters and have the opportunity to share what I believe is my unique combination of business background, building collaborations, and community involvements that we need now to move Sacramento forward and get us through these difficult economic times.
Thank you. Mr. Fong.
Good evening. My name is Darrell Fong. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum and the friends who have come to see me here tonight. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Sacramento, third generation Sacramento. I'm a product of local schools. I lived in the district for almost 30 years, 29 years in the Greenhaven Pocket area and on the year in Valley High. I just retired as a captain with the Sacramento Police Department after 30 years. It's given me a wealth of experience that I could never have without this job. I've worked all areas of this diverse city. And why am I running for public office? It's public service, no more, no less. I am not a politician. This is not a stepping stone for future office. I am a civil servant who worked with constituents and for the city. I had 3 priorities, and my message has stayed the same from the beginning of the campaign. It's public safety, jobs, economy of the city, and restoring faith in government. Public safety, for me, is most important. It's quality of life issues. As we most recently saw, second Saturdays has been an issue. And with my public safety experience, I can well be versed in how to look at that situation. And I've also talked to business people about what has taken place. Economy and jobs, getting the city budget back on track. I'm looking to have a strong reserve and get our cities back in service. And third, faith in our elected officials. I'm going to be the independent voice to bring consensus to our city council. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for our questions. And Mr. Garvin, will you please ask your first question to Mr. Chin?
Okay. I did want to ask you guys about Second Saturday and ask what ideas you had to make Second Saturday safer and less of a burden on Midtown neighbors. And specifically, I also want to ask if you think youth curfew sweeps are addressing the real problems going on with Second Saturday, and whether you think a gang injunction would be effective and how that would be enforced.
You know, I actually think that it's about having the community work together with our businesses and our police officers and our police force, and then potentially, you know, and making sure that that's a coordinated effort. I actually don't believe that enforcing a curfew is the right way to go about it. I think it's about making sure that you identify those groups as early as you can and make sure that you're going to work with them and inform them of how to act appropriately and when to act appropriately, and then hopefully intervene before it ever gets to be a problem. So that, I think, is where it is the best way you can go about it, again, before it gets to be a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Fong.
Second Saturday, I've had experience with these issues. We had trouble before in Old Sacramento and also in Thursday Night Market, so I've seen this take place. I was lieutenant of the downtown Sacramento area when we had issues in El Sacramento, and we did use curfews, and we also used enforcement, and also worked with the businesses to handle those issues. On second Saturday, I was a lieutenant of the Corps. When we started, it was an art walk, and it's changed into something different. It's brought different people down there, and by all means, we want to keep that venue. It's a perfect place for Midtown. But then again, we have other issues. It's morphed into something different. Younger people go down there. We have people that are drinking before they get there. And for us, the police, an injunction, I read in the paper, San Francisco, an injunction, I think us as the police department can effectively force working with the businesses to look at curfews, to address those issues, whether gang members are coming down there. And the police department needs the support of the businesses to work together to bring a joint plan together to work there. I think they have to scale back on what they're doing right now to get it back sort of what it was before when people would go down there. Many people that go down there now are not even buying anything or purchasing anything. For us to go back down to that way it was before, it's going to be after a partnership with the police department, the businesses, and the city of Sacramento.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Reed, will you please ask your question to Mr. Darrell Fong?
Sure. You both talked about bringing a new voice to the city council. What do you believe is the biggest mistake the current council has made in the last year or so, and what would you have done differently?
Well, some things I think we've all seen that there's not a consensus. Sometimes there's personalities get involved in the city council, and they're not talking to each other, and sometimes issues are brought forward. Could be talked in a consensus. I think myself, as being an independent voice, I know these people on the city council. I've worked with them and for them, so I understand what they want to accomplish. And I also understand what the mission of the city is. So that, I think, I can work with them and bring that independent voice forward to work with them. So.
Thank you. Mr. Chin.
You know, I think the biggest mistake of the city council simply has been that they focus too much on person and personalities and not problems and solutions. It's about who proposed the proposal and not the proposal itself. I think they need to focus in on solving our issues and being focused on how we move the city forward, how we bring businesses in there, how do we work with the community. And I think that's really the strength that I bring. I think that if you look at my history of being able to work with the community, I know I can bring that experience and those voices to the city council, but also it's also my business training. I've always, in Wells Fargo Bank management training, they talk to me often and early. You focus in on the problem and the solution, not the person and the personality. So I think that that's where the biggest mistake of the city council has been, and where one of my strengths is.
Thank you. And Ms. Haley, will you please direct your next question to Mr. Chin?
Okay. The Sacramento area has a 12.4% unemployment rate, according to August statistics from the federal government. As a city council member, how would you address unemployment in the city?
My number one priority is creating jobs. We have to create jobs for this area. And how do you do that? I think you use your strengths that the city has. So, for example, we have 4 strong hospitals here, and we should be using those industries and those businesses to bring in other businesses. So it could be medical supply, healthcare, medical research, and medical technologies. And as a city council member, I'm going to reach out to Guidant, St. Jude, Medtronic, and try to get them to come here. But also the other strengths that we have. We have 2 strong engineering programs at UC Davis and Sac State where I work. They should form the basis of a software industry here. And we also have, a big client base. So again, I think it's about attracting, quality jobs here to Sacramento to bring down our unemployment.
Thank you. Mr. Fong.
For us, I think we need to bring back businesses. We need to keep local businesses here. Local businesses are failing at a great rate. We need to make sure we help them stay in business. Development in the downtown core. We call it the core. That is where our entertainment, everything should be focused on that area. And that will run development. Railroad yards, Old Sacramento, the waterfront, that is the place we want things to happen. Our neighbors will support that development. And so I look at that being the place that we need to bring development. It will bring jobs. It will bring tourism here. Those are the things that we need to do. It's the most important thing that I've seen happen. And right now, we're a little bit behind the curve right now. Things have happened that have been beyond our control regarding the railroad yards, the K Street Mall, the waterfront.
Thank you. Mr. Garvin, will you ask your first question to Mr. Fong?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you each whether or not you support Measure B, the ballot measure that would roll back utility rates in the city of Sacramento. It'll be on the ballot this November. And why or why not? And if the measure does pass, how should the city adjust for that lost revenue? I'm sorry, is that to Mr. Fong?
I think I went first.
Okay, good.
Oh,
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Shane.
I really wish that Measure B was never necessary. I think it's the city's really lack of transparency and kind of not looking after the best interests of our city that got us into the place that we're facing these controversies and these lawsuits. But as I've talked to my constituents, as I've gone to 7,000 doors and talked to them, I do think it's necessary that we have some way, a mechanism to hopefully give relief to our residents in terms of utility rates and also restore confidence in the city that it's going to be transparent and act appropriately. As far as the impact that it has, again, I think it's going back to our ability to bring in other sources of revenue that we need now. Finding those ways to support our local businesses and to create jobs. And I'm hoping that Measure B is not necessarily, it's only a short-term solution. And that once the city has once there is restored confidence in the city and its transparency, that we can think differently.
Thank you. Mr. Fong.
There's 2 parts to Measure B. As a citizen who's lived my life, my wife, with concerns about the transparency of utilities, given the grand jury report, in Proposition 218. But with the rollbacks would probably hurt Sacramento, the budget, tremendously. We're looking at a $22 million shortfall to the utilities. We have infrastructure needs. I'm sure you've been downtown and you've had that, you smell what's down there. That's collapsing sewer pipes. We have water mains that are failing out in North Sacramento. And it's going to translate into a $2 million deficit for the general fund. And where is that going to come from? We're having a tough time right now making those things work. But for one thing, I think if I was elected city council member, we have to hold the people that are responsible and to be accountable and have an audit of what takes place, make sure the money's being spent correctly for the utilities department.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Reed, would you please ask your question to Mr. Fong?
Sure. So another budget-related question. To protect police and fire, City Council has cut back in many other areas of the budget, one of them being park maintenance. How would you address the needs in park maintenance that a lot of residents are concerned about?
Yes, it's true. We go through the parks, many of the lawns aren't mowed. And what I would look at is right now is to get community, the people to help and get involved in maintaining the parks. In Valley High, we have people that go out right now and volunteer with their own time to work and take care of the parks. As myself, if I was a city councilor, I'm not taking a salary. I would look at maybe putting my money more in the discretionary fund and assisting people to maintain these parks, provide equipment, provide gas, and whatever help I can provide, and actually help myself to help maintain these parks until we get out of this fiscal crisis.
I agree with Mr. Fong. I think that there should be a community involvement aspect to maintaining our parks. But actually, I would look to see what else we can think in a wider solution. I know that the city has park maintenance, the county has park maintenance, and school districts have, ground maintenance. I'd like to see us work collaboratively and regionally to find ways that we can help each other, maybe even be more efficient in how we deliver those services and coverage of those services, or possibly be able to share in those services so that if the city is working in a park and the county has a park next to it, maybe we can share those resources and hit that park, maintain that park twice a month instead of just once a month. So I believe that there is not only just a community-based, but a regionally based solution to park maintenance.
Thank you. And Ms. Haley, will you please direct your next question to Mr. Chin?
Okay. In your view, what are two of the most important public services provided by the city? How would you focus on these services as a council member?
I would say that one of the primary services that we have for a city is our land use. So making sure that we're developing properly. I think it's really important upon the city as we grow to make sure that we grow wise, that we have smart growth, that we have transit-oriented development, so that the city needs to be a good partner with both developers and our communities, so that developments go forward in a way that we all gain. I think the other services that is always important is public safety. We simply you have to know that you're going to be safe taking your kids to school or going to the grocery store, or that your house is going to have proper medical emergency responses or fire response when it comes down to it. So how do you work on that? Again, I think it's back to how much of a budget you have. Currently, the budget is about 85% of public safety. To continue to have adequate public safety, you've got to have a bigger budget. Try to find ways to grow that in.
Thank you. Mr. Fong.
For me, it's public safety, and part of my campaign's been public safety. Fire and police department, cities were formed to provide public safety, to provide safety for citizens to live here. But also it's for quality of life issues, to bring businesses here, for businesses to stay here, for families to move here. Another service we provide is economic development. I think that right now we bring economic development here, bring businesses here to really work hard, to work with the region, to make businesses come here, to make it feasible, to make it accessible, less red tape, so businesses can successfully relocate here and also stay in business here.
Thank you. Mr. Garvin, you ask your next question to Mr. Fong.
Okay. I have a sort of a two-part question about water, and I want to ask if you support a system of tiered water rates with higher prices for large water users like the Nestle bottling plant in South Sacramento. And part B of this question is whether or not you think city facilities like golf courses should have to follow the same watering rules that city residents have to follow.
Two-tiered water rates can you repeat that question again?
A tiered rate structure with large users like bottling plants paying more than commercial users, residential users.
Well, yeah, I would see that. Yes, I probably would agree in some of that, as long as it's in the stifled business, Cosmo. I mean, sure, if you use a lot of water, we have metered rates now, so yes, I would probably say yes, I would agree with probably not an exorbitantly amount, but probably a tiered amount that's reasonable so it doesn't restrict businesses, because I don't want to force businesses not come here and not move away either because of the water structure. We have abundant water, but we need to conserve water. We have 2 rivers here, but again, we have to conserve water. And the other question was for
whether city facilities.
For the golf course. Yes, as you understand, I drive through the city. Sure, they water at times they shouldn't be watering. Water runs into the floods, the parks, it floods the streets, and we complain. We need to have people that go out and maintain these facilities, watch the sprinklers, make sure the timers. I think an article was written about the timers not being set correctly. Sure, so we need to be very observant of how we use our precious resource.
Thank you, Mr. Fong.
So yes, I would support a 2-tiered water pricing. I know there is a difference simply between businesses and residents. But I agree that we have to make it fair and competitive so that we do have a business environment that's conducive to businesses coming here and settling here and working here and creating jobs here. So that would be something that we had to work on and refine, but yes, I would say that there should be a two-tier water system. And then as far as other facilities, yeah, I'd like to see consistent rules in terms of when you water applied to both the city facilities and the residents. I know that many of the residents are struggling to adjust their schedules as such, and that pain should be shared.
Thank you. And Mr. Reed, will you please direct your question to Mr. Fong? I'm sorry, to Mr. Chin, I apologize.
Sure. The Strong Mayor Initiative is on the back burner for now, but do you favor changing the city charter? And if so, what revisions do you think are needed?
I do think charter review is something that we should be looking at, and I think there was, from what you've heard from the citizens, they are strongly want to reconsider how we are governed. I think it's how we go about it, however. I think we need to make sure that it's a really open and collaborative process and that it involves the community. And, make sure that there are numerous opportunities for public comment and public reaction. As far as what would we do for the city charter, I'd like to make sure that we find ways that we can be as really, I think, progressive as we can to find and open to change and making sure that we find ways to move the city forward. How that is, I think that will depend. But again, yes, I think charter review is always on the table, I think, for any city and any time.
Thank you.
From the beginning of our campaign, we did not support the Strong Mayor Initiative based on the way it was written and the way it was proposed and how it was brought out to the public. During my campaign, we stayed on that mission, on that task, and talking to the constituents out there. I think they would like to see some change in the city charter, some change of governance, and I have no problem with that, long as it's vetted to the citizens, they have a chance to review it and see it. And that was the major concern I think that people had when I talked to them. They want to see it brought out, how it's going to be changed. The charter's been in place since the 20s, since I've been in city service, and definitely it needs some changes just among that other reasons. So some change for the mayor, he or she, the person who is the leader, the face of the city. I would see that some change is necessary, but it's change that needs to be positive, change that needs to be transparent.
Thank you. And now that we've finished the question and answer portion, we'll move on to our closing statements. And Mr. Ryan Chin will make the final closing statement.
Oh, I thought the opening statement.
Closing statement.
Oh, I got to open and close first? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here tonight and this opportunity. I really have enjoyed tonight's discussion. I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody that's worked on my campaign. I am very proud that this campaign has been more than about endorsement. It's really been about neighbors talking to neighbors and friends talking to friends. I think it's clear now that we need to focus in on our priorities, which would be creating jobs, supporting local businesses, and investing in our youth. We need new ideas and new leadership, ideas that are driven by our community, and leadership that's both works for our community and is a voice, independent voice for our community. We need an open and accessible city hall, and I'm committed to making that happen because I'm committed to our community, the community where I've spent the past 10 years doing community volunteer work, the community where I've raised my family, the community where I make my home. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I hope I can earn your support.
Thank you. Mr. Fong.
I want to thank the people for coming tonight and thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum tonight. Our message is the same, why I ran for office. I ran for office because of public service. As in the Constitution, as I went to Washington, D.C., it's about stepping out in public service. It was never meant to be a permanent job. My job is to run for city office. If I'm successful, do my time, and I will step back into private life. As a consensus, I want to be the independent voice that goes back to City Council. I've been endorsed by numerous different individuals on the City Council, endorsed by individuals in business entities, the Metro Chamber. I've been endorsed by Sheriff McGinnis, District Attorney Jan Scully, and other numerous officials. And also, recently, we've been re-interviewed by the Sacramento Bee, and we received an endorsement for the November general elections. We're very happy about that. I just want to thank you, the people that have assisted me in my campaign. It's been a long journey, and I'm somewhat surprised we're still here, but also hope to gain your vote in this November election. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters and the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission, I thank the candidates and our panelists for participating tonight. I would also like to thank all the volunteers who have made this forum possible. This forum has been designed to impart information to you, the voter, in accordance with our belief that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. We hope that the insights you have gained from this forum will aid you in making your decision. For more voter information and rebroadcast times, please visit the Smart Voter website at www.smartvoter.org or the League of Women Voters website at LWVsacramento.org. The League of Women Voters is where hands-on work to safeguard democracy leads to civic improvement. Please vote on November 2nd and help make our democracy work.